There's a pattern in your life you've probably noticed, even if you've never fully understood it. You find yourself pulled toward the same kind of people, the same dynamics, the same emotional experiences. And no matter how much awareness you gain, no matter how many times you tell yourself, this time will be different, it somehow ends the same way. You get hurt. Again. And the hardest part isn't just the outcome, it's the confusion. Because part of you knows better. Part of you sees the red flags early, feels the hesitation, recognizes the warning signs, but another part of you overrides it. You move forward anyway, not blindly, not ignorantly, but almost automatically, like something deeper is making the decision for you. And in a way it is. Because what you're drawn to isn't random, it's familiar. And, familiarity has a stronger pull than logic. So, if you've ever questioned why you keep ending up in situations that don't serve you, this is where you need to look. Not at what you're choosing on the surface, but at what's driving that choice underneath. You are wired to recognize what feels familiar, not what is healthy. One of the most important things to understand is that your brain doesn't naturally guide you toward what's best for you. It guides you toward what it knows, what it recognizes, what it has experienced before, what it understands how to navigate. Even if that experience wasn't positive, even if it involved stress, inconsistency, or emotional instability, if it's familiar, it feels manageable, because your system has already learned how to operate within it. This is why, someone can repeatedly find themselves in relationships that mirror past dynamics, even when they consciously want something different. Because at a deeper level, they're not really choosing based on health. They're choosing based on recognition. To start shifting this, you have to question your sense of attraction. Not just who you're drawn to, but why. Ask yourself, does this feel calm and stable, or intense and unpredictable? Because honestly, intensity often feels like connection when it's actually just familiarity. Your past experiences created a template you still follow. Before you had the ability to think critically about your environment, you were learning what relationships feel like, what connection looks like, what love means, and those early experiences formed a template, not a conscious one, but a functional one. If connection was tied to inconsistency, you learned to associate closeness with unpredictability. If attention came and went, you learned to chase it. If emotional expression wasn't met with understanding, you learned to suppress it. Those patterns didn't disappear. They became your baseline. So, when you encounter similar dynamics later in life, something in you recognizes it. And recognition feels like alignment, even when it's not. To interrupt this, you have to bring awareness to the template. Notice the patterns you repeat. Not just what happens, but how it feels. Because the feeling often points to something older than the situation itself. You're not just attracted to the person, you're attracted to the pattern. This is where it becomes more specific, Because what draws you in isn't always the individual, it's what they represent, the dynamic they create, the emotional experience they trigger. Someone who is inconsistent may activate a familiar pattern of pursuit. Someone who is emotionally distant may activate a pattern of trying to prove your worth. And that activation, it creates engagement. It pulls you in. Not because the connection is balanced, but because it fits a pattern your system already knows. To shift this, you need to separate the two, the person and the pattern. Ask yourself, if this person behaved consistently, would I feel the same level of attraction? Because often it's the unpredictability that creates the pull, not the actual connection. Your nervous system confuses intensity with safety. This is, honestly, one of the most misunderstood parts of the process, because when something feels intense, it can feel meaningful, important, significant. But your nervous system doesn't interpret intensity the way you think it does. It interprets familiarity as safety, even if that familiarity includes stress. So when you enter a dynamic that mirrors past experiences, your system may become activated, not necessarily calm, but engaged. And that engagement can feel like a strong connection, but it's not the same as feeling safe. Safety, well, it's quiet, it's stable, it doesn't create constant emotional spikes, and if you're not used to that, honestly, it can feel unfamiliar, maybe even a bit boring. But, unfamiliar doesn't mean wrong, it just means different. Learning to recognize the difference between intensity and safety is, I'd say, a key part of breaking the cycle. You may be trying to resolve something that was never completed. Sometimes the pull towards certain dynamics isn't just about familiarity, it's about resolution. If you experienced something in the past that didn't feel complete, maybe a lack of closure, unmet needs, or unresolved emotions, part of you may be trying to recreate that situation, not consciously, but internally, as a way to get a different outcome, to finally feel understood, chosen, valued. But the problem is, without awareness, you often recreate the same conditions, and the outcome stays the same, because the pattern hasn't changed. To move through this, you have to recognize that the past can't be resolved through repetition. It has to be processed directly, through awareness, through understanding, and, through choosing differently. You override your intuition because, the pattern feels stronger. There's usually a moment early on where, something just doesn't feel right. A hesitation, a subtle discomfort, a sense that something is off. That's your awareness quietly nudging you. But it often gets overridden by attraction, by curiosity, by the pull of the pattern. You tell yourself it's too early to judge, that maybe you're overthinking, that you should give it a chance. And sometimes that's valid, but other times it's just a way of ignoring what you already sense. Because following your intuition would require you to step away from something that, honestly, feels familiar. And that's not easy. To shift this, you have to start trusting those early signals, not reacting impulsively, but paying attention. Because your intuition often picks up on patterns before your mind fully processes them. Breaking the cycle requires conscious disruption. Awareness alone doesn't change patterns, it just shows them to you. To actually shift, you have to do something different. Consistently. That means making choices that don't feel automatic, not engaging in the same way, not responding the same way, not moving forward just because it feels familiar. It may mean stepping back earlier than you usually would. It may mean choosing someone who feels stable, even if it doesn't create the same level of intensity. It may mean sitting with discomfort instead of acting on it. These changes are not easy. because, well, they go against what your system is used to. But they are necessary, because without disruption, the pattern just continues. You have to redefine what connection feels like. At some point, you have to update your internal definition of what connection is, not based on intensity, not based on emotional highs and lows, but based on consistency, on mutual effort, on stability. That shift doesn't happen overnight, because, your system is still wired to respond to what it knows. But with time and repetition, it adjusts. What once felt boring starts to feel grounding. What once felt exciting starts to feel, unstable. And that's when your attraction begins to change, not because you forced it, but because your internal baseline has shifted. You're not stuck, but you are responsible for the pattern. This is where accountability comes in. Not in a blaming way, but in a clarifying way. You didn't choose the experiences that shaped your patterns, but you are responsible for recognizing them. And for choosing how you respond moving forward. Because once you see the pattern, you have a choice to continue it or to interrupt it. That choice may not feel easy, but it is available. And the more you act on it, the more your patterns start to change. Not instantly, but gradually. And that's how you move from repeating the same experiences to creating something different. If this kind of depth is what you're here for, real insight, real awareness, no surface-level distractions, then you already know this work isn't simple. But it's worth it. So if you're ready to stop being drawn to what hurts you and start choosing what actually aligns with you, make sure you subscribe and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because most people never question their patterns, and that's exactly why they keep repeating them.